The NHL trade deadline has officially come to an end, and we saw a ton of players get traded for draft picks that were full of conditions. Now, most of the conditions on those picks seemed normal. However, there were a few that really made some fans' heads turn, such as the condition on the first round pick in the Hanifin trade, which basically allowed them to dictate which pick the Flames got. Still a little irked at that, but I wanted to go back and take a look at some of the strangest conditions on NHL draft picks in NHL history, and perhaps there's no better way to start than to simply show you this. If you're also confused on what it means to, quote, play a role in it, you're not alone. I mean, just look at Greg over here. But Olli Jokinen's time in Toronto is actually kinda sad. Prior to his arrival, he was a member of the Nashville Predators, who looked like a team who could contend for the playoffs. But on April 15th, 2015, they would decide to randomly trade the now 36-year-old winger to Toronto. The following day, Jokinen was set to talk to the media, and was immediately hit with this.
How long do you expect to stay here?
I don't know. Right now I'm a Maple Leaf, and I'll approach it day by day.
Even the reporters knew that Jokinen had zero business being in Toronto, as they were a team at the bottom of the standings, and Jokinen wanted to join a contender in hopes of a cup. In fact, viewing the comments of said interview, you can see that even the fans know that the trade by Nashville just wasn't right. So fast forward to March 2nd, and we get hit with that tweet by Pierre LeBrun, and are left to wonder what they could mean by "and plays a role in it." The full trade would see Toronto ship Jokinen to St. Louis for that conditional pick, which was a 2016 6th-round draft pick, along with Joakim Lindstrom, who'd only play 19 games with the Leafs. So they didn't get much, but they were able to make Jokinen happy. Unfortunately, however, the Blues would fail to reach the Stanley Cup final, and they'd lose to Minnesota in round 1. And Jokinen didn't even play in a single game in the playoffs. So much for playing a role in it. Speaking of confusing, look no further than the Kevin Shattenkirk trade, which funny enough also involves the St. Louis Blues. The Washington Capitals were getting fed up with the constant choking come playoff time, and knew they'd have to make a move to try and get the team over the hump. Shattenkirk was one of the hottest names in the trade market, so the Caps took a swing at him and would acquire Shattenkirk in one of the most complicated deals the league's seen in a very long time. St. Louis would ship off Phoenix Copley and Kevin Shattenkirk at a weirdly specific 39% retained, since the Caps had no cap space, for Brad Malone, Zach Sanford, a 2017 first-round pick, and a 2019 conditional second-round pick. Now, brace yourselves, cause this is gonna get interesting. There were a few ways the Blues could get that second round pick. If the Capitals re-signed Shattenkirk, boom, they get it, it's done. But if they don't, as long as the Capitals advance to the Eastern Conference Final and Shattenkirk plays in 50% of the first 2 rounds, it's also theirs. Awesome. Well, there's another conditional pick St. Louis could have gotten as well. Quote, if the Capitals trade Shattenkirk on or before July 1st, 2017, the Blues receive a 7th round pick. However, should the return in a trade be a 4th round pick or earlier, instead of the 7th round pick, the Blues receive the next available pick 2 rounds later than the earliest pick received by the Capitals. What? Basically, the easiest way to explain this is by using an example. Say the Capitals traded Shattenkirk on July 1st and get a 2nd round pick back in the trade. Then, that conditional 7th round pick would become a 4th round pick.
Beautiful. That was beautiful.
The cherry on top of all of this, however, is that none of that would even matter, as the Capitals would lose yet again in the 2nd round and would let Shattenkirk walk in free agency. So neither conditions were met. The Capitals wouldn't get the 7th round pick and would use that 2019 2nd round pick to select Brett Leason. Mark Streit is one of the most underrated and, honestly, underappreciated defensemen of the 2010s. It's very rare for a player to remain consistent as they get older, but Streit aged like fine wine, and that's why teams are still eager to acquire him even at the age of 39. He was a solid depth contributor on the blue line that could still guarantee you 25 points this season, so it made him an intriguing player for teams in playoff contention. At the 2017 trade deadline, the Flyers would trade away Streit to the Lightning Lightning for Valtteri Filppula, a 2017 4th round pick, and a conditional 2017 7th round pick. The Flyers would retain 4.7% of Strite's contract, which again seems like a random number, but the condition on the 7th round pick is laughable, especially for what happens next. The Flyers would only receive that 7th round pick if the Lightning traded Strite, and they would immediately do so, flipping him to Pittsburgh for a 2018 4th round pick. That 4th rounder they get from Pittsburgh would be traded away to Vegas alongside of Nikita Gusev to ensure that the Golden Knights had to select Jason Garrison in the expansion draft. Vegas would then use that 4th to select Paul Cotter, and that conditional 7th round pick the Flyers would receive from Tampa would be used on Wyatt Kalynuk, who didn't play a single game in Philly. Speaking of laughable, there's another quick story I wanted to throw in. Now, this may technically be cheating as it wasn't a conditional draft pick, but it was still kind of a condition nonetheless. In 2004, the Phoenix Coyotes would trade away Brian Savage to St. Louis, who make their 3rd appearance in today's video, for future considerations. The funny thing, however, was that the future consideration that was agreed upon was a condition, one that stated that the Coyotes had to take him off waivers the following season. Why? Well, Savage's contract was brutal, so the Blues said they'd hold on to it until the season's over, but the Coyotes had to take him and his cap hit back, meaning that Brian Savage would get traded for himself. Patrick Eaves was having the best year of his career back in 2017. The 32-year-old would hit the 20-goal mark for the first time in his career and would produce 37 points in 59 games prior to him getting dealt in February of that year. The Stars didn't seem poised to make that year's playoffs, so they decided to trade Eaves to a contender in hopes of a big return. And man, did they get one. The Stars would ship Eaves off to Anaheim for a conditional 2017 2nd round pick that had the potential to become a 2017 1st round pick. If the Ducks made that year's Western Conference Final and Eaves played in 50% of the games in the first 2 rounds, the second would turn into a 1st. Many believed that it could be possible, but there was doubt amongst fans that Anaheim could make it to the Western Conference Final. However, as most know, they did make it and were actually 1 win away from making it to that year's Stanley Cup Final. Eaves would play in over 50% of the games, so the second would become a 1st. But we're not done. On draft night, the Stars would make a trade with the Blackhawks.
Chicago trades pick number 26 to Dallas in exchange for pick number 29 and pick number 70. So Chicago trades 26 to Dallas in exchange for 29 and 70, which is a 3rd round pick, so you get to get excited again.
Dallas would trade up 3 spots and take
Jake Ottinger.
The Dallas Stars would turn Patrick Eaves into their current star goaltender, who's been continuing to make fans' jaws drop on a nightly basis. This draft would end up being huge for the Stars franchise. They'd select their future #1 defenseman Miro Heiskanen 3rd overall, and would use the pick after Ottinger to select Jason Robertson. The Patrick Eaves trade shows that conditions on draft picks can be more impactful than many would assume. Most believe it's just a way to complicate things, and is a way teams can try and retain the asset they're giving up. But when the conditions are met and the team gets rewarded, that pick you assumed you'd end up keeping could be the final piece the other team needed to finish forming a contender.
We're kind of getting a little too horny, getting in there and you know, exposing it, and they're able to keep those pucks alive.